would you do to make Kingston greener and more environmentally friendly?
Right, well, the first thing is that I and my local and Conservative colleagues on Kingston Council and London Mayor Boris Johnson are quite clear that there should be no building on Chessington's green belt. That was a scare story put out by the Liberal Democrats before the last local elections. It was completely untrue, and indeed I brought Boris down to Chessington to reassure local residents that that's not going to happen, and surprise, surprise, it hasn't. It's important to me that our green spaces here in Kingston are the best they can be and the most accessible they can be to local people, and therefore I support the council investing more money to make sure our parks and our green spaces look at their very best and are fully accessible to people in the borough, and that they're encouraged to use them. And I also support the council's efforts to look at solutions to the dog fouling problem, which is something which people write a lot about, the problem of people dog fouling both in and outside of parks.
We need to take a broader approach first of all, and we need to tackle climate change. We need to switch to renewable energy. We need to stop emissions. So that's first and foremost going to help with issues like this. But we also need to prepare, and the government hasn't prepared adequately for the effects of climate change, and that's because they're not taking it seriously. Renewable energy is an obvious one. I know that's a national issue, but we also support kind of local energy co-ops as well, and creating our energy that way. We think, air pollution is very bad in Kingston, so making it easier and safer for pedestrians and cyclists. Local transport as well, so looking at the way that we fuel that, so we think we should fuel our trains and buses with electricity that's been created by renewable energy sources as well. So it's lots of little things that will tie in with that in terms of the local area, but it's also important on the national scale as well.
Yeah, once again, this sounds very party political, but I'm afraid it's just the truth, that the flood defence measures have been underinvested in the last 5 years. It's all part of this austerity agenda. Everything has to be cut back. Lots more people get put at risk, and the flooding. I know it was flooded here. I think it was last February, last January. A bit further down the river, it was terrible. You know, I know Chertsey, for instance, which is another town just a bit further down, was almost completely flooded, and that's not good enough. If we get elected, we will reinvest in flood defences. Top of my head, I'm not sure exactly how much, but there is a firm commitment to reinvest in flood defences in Kingston and all the other towns.
Well, Kingston is pretty good, but it needs to be better. We've been good at things like recycling. When the Liberal Democrats ran the council, despite opposition from the Conservatives, we've really brought in recycling across the borough at scale, and we were right at the top of London's boroughs for recycling. Slightly worried that the new Conservative council is cutting back. It's getting rid of weekly recycling, and I think we'll see our recycling rates drop, I'm afraid. But we've had a good record on things like recycling. Where I don't think we've been so good at is on things like energy. I'm a real supporter of community energy, so we produce more energy locally, but also energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is sometimes called the fourth fuel. It's the best fuel, it's the cheapest fuel. And making people's homes warmer, getting the best gas boilers so they're more efficient and don't waste energy. These are the sorts of things that we need to do more, and that means the council working with businesses, working with residents, and indeed with government policies, I think need to do more so that we can save energy. But I hope Kingston will be at the forefront of that technology.
So I think, you know, the problems with the environment in Kingston are the same as the problems with the environment nationally and actually globally. We are facing a huge environmental crisis. Tusk is very clear on what they think is causing this crisis, and what we think is causing this crisis is capitalism. In the very fabric of capitalism is overconsumption. Capitalism relies on overconsumption to continue. Also inbuilt redundancy, so redundancy in products and redundancy in food and other products. And also, you know, in the way that companies and corporations are reliant on fossil fuels as a source of energy, and it's very difficult for them to shift from that and to invest in green energy. What we would say is that we want to have massive investment in green energy, in green technology in general, in Kingston and nationally, and we would support the design of goods for reuse and recycling. Essentially what we want to do is to make sure that goods are produced for need and not for profit. So we want to make sure that overconsumption is controlled in Kingston and elsewhere.